Early this week, we talked about Target and the fact that their vice president of branding is a treasurer at Knudsen. Now, that's a pro-LGBT group that works in schools, in part to get schools to adopt policies that keep parents in the dark on their children's in-school gender transition. Now, you want to know where do these policies lead? Where do these type policies lead? Well, we don't have to look too far. In 2020, teachers and administrators at a Florida school socially transitioned a 13-year-old girl through a so-called gender support plan that included changing her name and asking her which bathroom she preferred to use, all without her parents' knowledge or consent. Since then, the parents have sued the school district, and now attorneys general from 21 states have joined the legal action, filing a brief in the case this week in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Joining me now to discuss this is the Montana Attorney General, Austin Knudsen, who is leading this effort among his state AGs in filing the brief. General Knudsen, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
So explain to me and our listeners why this is important that 21 AGs weighed in this court battle.
Well, this is a very seminal case. I mean, look, you've got a situation here where a public school has basically inserted itself between a child and the child's parents, and that should horrify everyone. What's even more horrifying is that a federal district court in Florida found that was okay, and which is why we're going up to the 11th Circuit. But look, there's a ton of jurisprudence here. It's a long-standing facet of American jurisprudence that parents are the primary decision makers for their children. We call them minors for a reason. They haven't reached the age of majority yet, to use a legal term. We don't let minors join the military. We don't let them consume alcohol. We don't let them vote until they're 18. And there's good reason for that, because their brains are not fully developed. We know this from science, but we also know from thousands of years of just being humans that parents are in a better place to make decisions for their children. And so when you have a case like this, where a school district actively pushed parents aside and subterfuged the parents, subverted the parents and the parents' directives for their child here, and instead went and had secret meetings with this child to try to get this child to transition, that's pretty horrifying. My daughter can't get an aspirin at the school without me getting a phone call, but suddenly it's okay that for the school district to start talking to my children about transitioning.
Right.
No, this is not right.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a couple of items they pick and choose on this in terms of how they're going to treat it differently. I mean, for instance, if you had a young person, a child, a student that say they came from an atheist family and they became a Christian, would the school hide that from the parents? I don't think so. They don't have any plans in place to do that. But when it comes to issues like sexuality or abortion, we see increasingly schools working in contradiction to parents. And it's amazing to me, frankly, General, that this got to the appellate court, that you had a lower court that actually ruled against the parents.
It's amazing to me as well, Tony. I'm stunned by it. But I mean, this is why I think this is why you see 20 of my colleagues joining me on this brief, because we're horrified too. I mean, this kind of upends long-standing U.S. Supreme Court jurisprudence here. I mean, it's a long-standing facet and tradition in American law that parents are the primary decision makers for their children.
But play this out.
Absolute.
Play this out for us.
To that.
Play this out for us just a moment. Where could this lead? I mean, if this type of jurisprudence were to be established, where could this lead?
Well, it's scary to think about. I mean, right now, the limits are, I mean, obviously you as a parent, you don't have the right to make harmful decisions for your children. You know, you can't decide to have them undergo some sort of dangerous treatment or dangerous activity that would harm them. We've found those limits within the court cases, but this is very scary stuff. I mean, if a school district can step in, which is basically your local government, step in and start making gender identity decisions for your children and exclude you as a parent, I mean, where does this go? Does it go next to actual transitioning? Does it go to surgery? Does it go to medical decisions? I mean, you're asking the right question. Where does this end? And that's what's so concerning about this.
You know, it's interesting that this case is coming to the forefront, as I mentioned at the top, when during Pride Month, Target, one of their VP of branding, actually a part of Glisten, pushing these types of policies in the schools. So we see this connection with corporate America and many of these schools pushing through these special interest groups, pushing policies that are alienating children from their parents.
Well, this is really fascinating. Whether you're talking about, Anheuser-Busch or Target, I would lump the public schools in this. I would argue that between COVID and some of these crazy decisions now that we're getting out of some school districts, this has been a boon for homeschooling. It's been a boon for Christian education. It's been a boon for private schooling. School choice has really benefited from this. And I don't think the schools probably intended on that, but I think it's a positive outcome here. But look, the market will ultimately bear this out. I think that's what this comes down to. If you as a parent are faced with a school district that's going to do these things behind your back and make these kind of decisions with your children and for your children and exclude you, at that point, I know what I would do. I would take my kids out of that public school, and we'd be talking about homeschooling or some sort of school choice.
But we got to make sure that we have individuals like you that are protecting the rights of parents to make those decisions, because don't think they'll stop just with their gender transition. They'll reach to try to keep them from making educational choices. General, we're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us, and thanks for leading on this effort. It's very important.
It is. You bet. Thanks for having me, Tony.